hours of July 19th, 1969, Ted Kennedy drove his car off the bridge into the Chappaquiddick Channel below. With him in the car was 29-year-old Mary Jo Kopechne. Ted was able to climb out of the water and onto the land, but Mary Jo wasn't. In the ensuing months, Mary Jo's death was investigated, covered up, and then largely forgotten by the American populace. But how is this possible? Today, we'll be investigating the Chappaquiddick incident of 1969, which highlights how women close to powerful men in history often get minimized, by first looking at the stories of Mary Jo Kopechne and Ted Kennedy. Next, looking at the Kennedy family cover-up of Chappaquiddick, before finally looking at how the news chose to portray the story. Ted Kennedy was born in 1932, and despite being elected into the Senate at only 30 years old, he was still the least impactful of his three politically involved brothers. John was president, and Bobby was nearly. According to political writer Joe McInnes, Ted was forever the fat, awkward, and lonely brother, constantly ignored by his parents and siblings, only to be pushed into the public limelight later in life. He met Mary Jo Kopechne in 1964 when she was working as one of Bobby Kennedy's famous Boiler Room Girls, a group of 6 young women who collected vital election data for the Kennedy family. According to Time magazine, the Boiler Room Girls were smart, efficient, but most importantly, cultishly pro-Kennedy. But in 1968, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, and with that, their dreams were crushed. They moved back to their childhood home, and Mary Jo was ready to leave politics forever. But she couldn't stay away. She moved back and started hanging out with the Boiler Room Girls again. They would throw small get-togethers and reminisce on the work they used to do. It was at one of these get-togethers that she met Senator Ted Kennedy, who offered to give her a ride back to her hotel room. She accepted, but he made a wrong turn and they ended up on the bridge over the Chappaquiddick Channel. He crashed the car and they both fell into the water below. After the accident, Ted ran back to his hotel room, choosing not to report the incident to the authorities. The next morning, his car was found with Mary Jo's body inside, but he claimed most of his reaction the previous night was due to shock, stress, and confusion. With that, Ted was pretty sure his problem was entirely solved. Unfortunately, the entire Kennedy family and their legal team disagreed, so they created a damage control team. The first thing this team did was make sure to hide Mary Jo's body from any further examination, which caused rumors to spiral that she might have been pregnant with Ted's child. They also made sure to hide Ted's expired license. In the end, Ted only received 2 months for his crime, which he didn't have to serve due to his good standing as Ted Kennedy. But in the end, he decided to address the Massachusetts public, where he maintained that he hadn't driven drunk or cheated on his wife, despite any of the rumors saying otherwise. But the most important part of the Chappaquiddick cover-up didn't even have to be done by the Kennedy family, because the same weekend of Chappaquiddick was the weekend of July 20th, 1969, more famously known as the moon landing. By Monday morning's papers, any news of Chappaquiddick had been swept from the front page. And in the end, 65% of voters, a greater number than we ever have in politics today, so that they would re-elect Ted Kennedy. And maybe part of the reason for such a high percentage is that everyone had forgotten about Mary Jo Kopechne. If we look at the headlines at the time, not a single one mentions Mary Jo by name. Secretary, blonde, Kennedy passenger, Jersey girl, but not her name. She was reduced down to her least important qualities, and anything she would have wanted the world to know about her was cut out. Like that she'd been inspired by JFK's inaugural address and moved down to Montgomery, Alabama to join the civil rights movement. She worked as a teacher where she was loved by all her students and co-workers, who were proud when she received her dream job working for Bobby Kennedy. She was a small town girl with big dreams, but according to this, she was nothing more than one poor decision, a possible affair, and her life became nothing more than her final moments in Ted Kennedy's car. In the end, people didn't understand the value of Chappaquiddick because they didn't know who Mary Jo Kopechne was. After first looking at the stories of Mary Jo Kopechne and Ted Kennedy, next looking at the Kennedy family cover-up of Chappaquiddick, and finally, looking at how this story was told by the media, we can see how women close to powerful men are historically minimized. In history, women are often reduced down to adjectives and forgotten by these powerful men able to tell their story. We then heroize, mythologize, and eventually forgive these same people. Instead, we have to choose to remember those like Mary Jo Kopechne, make sure to tell their stories, and make sure that they're not forgotten.